aspects of emptiness,
Hmm.
yes, and wholeness, and how is that, what is it, and how,
Emptiness versus wholeness.
no, not necessarily versus in the aspects of meditation or the experiencing of that. Can you get into that? What is that at all? I think the emptiness is more challenging. I mean, both aspects of the extreme. So if
Hmm.
you don't mind, and how is that related? Because I know you mentioned that. I think Boris even asked that question at one point. Just don't remember exactly, or I want to have a better understanding. So maybe you can talk more about that.
So we'll go much deeper into that in a few chapters. But for now, maybe let's do that in the form of our short meditation coming in. So I'll say before, emptiness is not the best way to describe this. It's a bit of like a baggage from the Eastern languages. I much prefer no inherent meaning or lack of inherent meaning. And that also goes hand in hand with the notion of a mental construction. So and anytime I say mental construct, it is the equivalent of pointing to its emptiness, meaning the construct exists in a form that has no inherent meaning, that has no inherent existence outside of being made of a collection of mental bits, of sensory bits, or of mental atoms. Every mental construct that we spin up is necessarily made of pieces of our sensory modalities. So sight, smell, proprioception, emotion. Actually, even emotion, in some sense, you could say is not the emptiest form because you still have underlying sensations in the body and sensations of temperature and pressure and so on. And so in emptiness practice, and we're going to do that for in a second, the goal is both to see the construct as we know it. So, for example, the emotion, like something we might call anger, or a mental construct of our identity, while also feeling the actual immediate sensations happening wherever it is in the body, wherever it is in the space of awareness. So let's try that now. So you come into the space, bring to mind the intention that brought you here. And as we empty out and dissolve everything else, and even as we see the so-called emptiness of the intention, if that's one that's aligned, it's going to stay and continue bubbling up from the ground, even as we dissolve it and everything else, even as we see the emptiness of it and everything else. So connect to the intention of coming here. Can be to deepen in the intellectual understanding of the path, can be to go towards enlightenment as we described it, can be to feel better in our bodies. And with the intention of letting go of everything else, feel into any sensation you can have in your body. Connect to the entire space of awareness, all of the sensory modalities. Even with eyes closed, what do you see in front of your eyes? And all of the sounds, all of the smells, all of the sensations. Many of the sensations that we feel generally, habitually, are more on the periphery of the body. So like our sits bones on the seats or our clothes, touching our skin, rubbing against it. What would it be like to explore the sensations on the complete other end, like deep inside our bones? There are always sensations coming from there. Deep inside our bones and our blood vessels, fascia. Almost like every cell, moment to moment, is reporting on its state by evoking some sensation. Now, from this space of feeling everything, consider how you would inflect your mind to get in contact with the least particular aspect of experience. And even saying getting into contact is a little too much. How could you be the least particular about experience? Normally, we direct attention towards sort of qualities in the space, like the redness of an apple or the squareness of our computer screen. What's the movement in the opposite direction? You dissolve all preference for what to experience right now. Just let everything in without any definition. And even if the mind goes towards a particular thing, towards a thought, towards some piece of experience, you're not gonna place more attention on it. You're not gonna particularize it even more. Just rest in the least particular. If you do that, thoughts might come up, old intentions might come up, other things that are in the cache of your mind might come up. And you just don't do anything about them. Just rest in this non-particular space. Nothing in particular to do and nowhere in particular to go. If there's no agenda and nowhere in particular to go, nothing is a distraction. You fully open the aperture of consciousness, everything just comes in, does its thing, and dissolves. This path gets easier and easier the less we're attached to any particular outcome, to any particular experience. Anything needing to be a particular way. Notice how this exploration has changed the quality of awareness, the quality of sensations coming from your body. What is the signature of this less differentiated space? Does your body feel softer or tighter? Does it feel more prickly or more milky? Does awareness have more shape or less shape? And you can keep the signature in mind as something that, with this type of practice, you can remember the somatic signature of. It's like a beacon when you go towards it again. It's the more dissolved, more relaxed, more empty state. And this is something that you can do outside of the normal stages of practice. You can do it every time you take a breath, every time you finish a call, every time you finish writing a message, even in 10 seconds. It's the span of a short breath. Just allowing the mind to naturally let go of any mental construct that doesn't serve it anymore. And we bring this exploration to a close when you're ready. Curious to know how this went for you. Take your time.
For me, I like that you started by saying that it's a mental construct.
Mhm.
And I think the challenge for me was how do you take that mental construct and try to apply that? So I had this aversion first, of course, to the idea of emptiness, which I believe that we cannot reach, but I understand the direction, yes, to get as closer as possible
Mhm.
to that state. Um, and at one point, it seems like kind of very blurry. You don't know how you can break down to the atomic, subatomic level, almost kind of emptiness.
Mhm.
But maybe that's not the main point, because so for me, I mean, it's easier to adapt a particular attitude, kind of like instead of having the emptiness, having something like the least possible element or item to hold but ultimately obviously not to attach to it.
Yeah.
So the attitude of whatever it is again, and you touch about that about the mental yoga, and you talk about some kind of like detachment, allowing it to be and flowing it and focusing on something gentle, like gratitude, appreciation, but not with the least construct element. So that's the direction, and direction it's something that it's easier for me to grasp, but emptiness seems above and
Yeah.
beyond that.
So
So
emptiness as well is a mental construct. right?
Yes.
It's just a pointer.
Okay.
And it's only the meditation that's relevant. And here I'm giving you something that's very condensed, right? The practice book and the parts of it that I've not written yet go into it step by step. Here is it's a bit of a stretch, right? Like don't expect to do that perfectly. It's like giving you a taste of what it can
Yeah.
be like. And so as we do the meditation, it's also important not to think about, oh, did I get to the atoms? Did I get to the right? Let's just let it happen. Yeah. So how was it? What did you feel? What did you encounter?
For me, it was at the beginning, it looked strange and difficult. But then I tried to ignore that it's difficult and just doing it. What helped me, I think, somehow to get into it was your analogy of the aperture.
Mm-hmm.
It brought to me also about, apart from it being wide, in photography, when you open the aperture, everything becomes out of focus.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea somehow helped me to just defocus everything, and that was nice.
Good. So in some sense, the emptiness practice is the defocusing, the dissolving of what attention does, right? The thing that focuses, and it focuses on a few particular dimensions of experience and makes them into an object. And then it takes a few of those objects and creates another object, right? From that object. So in some sense, the defocusing is the way to go. And it's not the final state that we want to be, right? We want to have a dynamic process of dissolving and constructing so that what we have online is what's most relevant to the moment versus all the baggage that we've been carrying for the past few decades. And I don't know, like you tell me if you felt any of it, but the more we dissolve this way, the more our bodies start feeling soft, the more sensations are pleasant, even blissful. Because until we develop our system, all of those constructs necessarily rely on tightening, on contracting, on freezing in some way the tissues of the body to allow for the stabilization of those mental constructs, particularly the ones that are load-bearing mental constructs, so to speak, the assumptions that are frozen in our bodies and minds. Right? And those are what we've been calling the genes that we're wearing, or the layers and layers of genes, right? So it's not just a clothing item, so to speak. It's our whole body is frozen in that position that reflects the assumptions that we have happening unconsciously, and we have a hard time letting go.
I did feel the softening, but not what the next steps that you described.
Yeah. It's just the beginning. So when we speak about mental yoga, the chapter we are discussing today, what we're trying to do in this context is use the same machinery using attention and the creation of mental constructs, but in a way that the Buddhists called wise effort or wise tension. Generally speaking, tension is created because a part of us, an aspect of the system, wants to go a certain way, and there's conflict with another part. There's a lack of agreement and coherence about where to go. So in some sense, the tension is not just the mechanism for holding together a mental structure, it's also the battleground against another part that has a different agenda. And so what we do, instead of having the normal genes or the normal straitjackets about this is the identity and this is how I'm using it to meet my needs and so on, we're trying to create mental constructs. We're trying to create a wrapper for the entire mind that all of our parts have a much easier time agreeing on. And that is the essence of the entire first thrust of the practice book. All of the process of creating collectiveness of mind, internal harmony, a consensus between the different parts. We're using the same tools to create configuration of mind that's more useful in the context of our going towards freedom, in the context of us eventually letting go of all of the mental constructs that we are attached to. And a nice analogy is that the ordinary mind that still suffers, is like a person who fell down in a field of thorns, and the body's full of thorns. It's like just covered all over, and of course it's painful and you're bleeding. But then what you do is find a fine thorn and start going towards the thorns and picking them out. Right? So we use the same tool that ultimately we want to drop down, because as we go down the path, we want to make less effort, we want to tense up less, even for this purpose of letting go of tensions. But until we do that, that's what we have access to. And so this chapter is about how we use the so-called Brahma Viharas, the abodes of the divine, is the direct translation, of the states of mind, or the qualities of mind that are considered the highest. Which instead of appealing to divinity, I like just calling the sustainable attitudes. Sometimes they're called the immeasurable qualities or immeasurable attitudes, because in a sense, there's always a place for them. It's never a bad idea to have more equanimity. It's never a bad idea to have an attitude of loving kindness. It's never a bad idea to have gratitude for what's happening. It's never a bad idea to have sympathetic joy for someone else. And compassion, of course, is always what we're doing anyway. Sometimes it and some of these other qualities are a little warped by the existing by the existing mental constructs that we are attached to. The question is just how much are we top down creating our version of compassion and approximation of it, of what would naturally arise, and how much is naturally arising from the ground? Because as we talked about last time, these qualities in a mind that's not attached to anything, that's not holding any mental construct, arises naturally. In some sense, you could say compassion, gratitude, love are the fundamental structure of the universe. And that's partly what I gave a talk about in Esmeralda last week. And we will talk about this more going forward. For now, I'll just leave you with the idea that from a game theoretical perspective, meaning from the study of what makes agents playing a game, playing in an economy, collaborate well, you could say that the winning strategy is love. And it's a very reduced form of this whole idea. I'm just going to put it here as a placeholder, as a bookmark. And so the more we dissolve in this way that we just did, the more we go deep into an undifferentiated state, the more what naturally will arise is a form of love, a form of compassion, gratitude, a recognition of the way that the ground is shaped in this way, and a behavior that matches it. And the whole point of what I've been calling mental yoga is, first of all, approximate those qualities, approximate the ground by taking on those qualities. So we have the highest version of compassion, and we wear it, and in some sense fake it until we make it. It helps us align with the ground and also dissolve anything that's not aligned with the ground. And two, by taking that mental shape, by doing this mental yoga, we are necessarily shedding a light on any tension that's created by something that's not aligned. So if we do loving kindness practice, so if we do compassion practice, it highlights every part of the mind that's operating with the let's say the polarized quality. So the the polar quality of compassion is ill will. If compassion is the desire and the movement towards helping someone in pain or helping someone be happy, ill will is the opposite. It's the desire to cause pain. It's the desire to take something away from someone. And so just like in yoga, when we take a position and we see in the body anything that's not in harmony with the position, we see whatever is tense, whatever is holding on to something, and then the position highlights that tension. And in standard yoga practice, it helps us breathe into it and inquire and hold it tenderly and see what's there. The exact same thing happens when we are sitting still on the cushion and doing what is more of a mental exercise. But of course, in the same context that we discussed, the tensions in the body arise even as we take a quote unquote mental posture. And as we go deeper and deeper into collecting the mind around one of those qualities, we see what doesn't align. And the more we do it, the less effort it requires, because the mind starts creating this gravity well of this positive, appealing, pleasant quality. And the rest of the mind is pulled to join the party, because it sees that holding on to anger at someone, ill will, hate, and desire to do harm doesn't feel so good. It's just not as pleasant. It doesn't lead to peace. It's not as coherent and as nice as it is to hold the mind around gratitude. And in that is, in some sense, the whole path. Because as we train the mind to naturally, without effort, hold those configurations, as we let go of every part that's not aligned with the ground in this way, the easier it is for the mind to instantiate those configurations without effort. And the more things that are not aligned, just very quickly, without any thought, without any effort, without examination, dissolve into the nicer configurations. And now just a word on the next chapter, which is the one talking about fundamental principles. Mostly I'm discussing it from an intellectual perspective, like how to talk about the path in a way that's less confusing, in a way where every word carries more impact and more meaning. Because we have a language, because we have a code that we share for communications that can allow more information, a more succinct and poignant pointer about the path be transmitted with every word. But then similarly, what we're doing by applying the mental yoga and all of the other instructions is, in the same way, teaching the mind the more fundamental principles of the Dharma, the more fundamental principles of how to instantiate a healthy mind. And in this way, you could talk about the Brahma Viharas, the positive qualities, as the more fundamental principles of mind, or the finer Lego pieces that we were describing earlier. So we keep learning more fundamental principles for how to talk about the path and how to inflect the mind and how to construct it from Lego pieces. And then the finer instantiation of the mind is the place from which we can discover even deeper principles. It's like first inventing a microscope and then using it to construct finer materials with which to create an even more powerful microscope, and so on and so forth. So that's my summary of what we're exploring today, and opening it up to.
So if I understand understand correctly, you're saying that making ourselves aware of the parts of the mind that are acting against this harmonious states, and having some intention to go there, that's all is needed. All else is the automatic gravitational well that somehow we don't have to do anything, just see them, the things, and have intention.
So yes and no. Yes, ideally, that's what happens. And you'll see in the practice book that this is what I describe. Ultimately, you want to place more emphasis on this process of collectedness and on the qualities that are created. Sort of like place an emphasis of like 70 to 80% on the goodness and 20 to 30 on the tensions, on the things that are not aligned. Sometimes when something is particularly entrenched in our bodies, the thorn went very deep, it might require other tools to fully allow that structure to unfold in mind, to see the web of its tensions, how it's related to our identity, and what makes it so deeply rooted. And so there are practices for that as well. But as we do the practice and let whatever can melt away for free, we're left with just the things that do require some more attention, right? Otherwise you go with the thorn one by one by one, and it can take 10,000 lifetimes.
Coming back to the meditation in the beginning, you talked about these polar opposites. Like you asked us, does your body feel softer or like more prickly and so on. And that was a really interesting moment for me because it was kind of both in different parts. It felt like, and then I we always talk about genes, right? And how they constrain our movement. And then I felt like, especially my like right arm felt really, really, really tense and prickly. And then I realized, oh, like this is, it felt like this is how it always is, but now I see it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so would you say then that is the part that is not goodness, the part that we should focus 20 to 30% of attention on, or?
Yeah.
Because in that moment it felt really useful. Like I wanted to see as much of that like painful thing as possible because it felt like just seeing it like processed it.
Yeah. So all of the instructions are guidelines. Ultimately, in the meditation, you're the highest authority. You're like an explorer discovering new lands. So it's up to you how you want to engage. Sometimes there will be something so interesting or something calls your attention so much that you want to give it 100%. Generally speaking, it's best to do something like this, especially if it's prickly or intense or feels like it might start be overwhelming, to do that from the perspective of having more awareness to the parts of the body mind that are more in coherence, that are more feeling peaceful or blissful, and coming from there, even with an invitation to join, or like it can even be an implicit invitation to join, right? Like you don't have to say, hey, join the thing. Just by virtue of looking or allowing the prickliness to see the wider perspective of what's available, it's an implicit invitation. So there's no wrong answer, and skill is necessarily cultivated through your own explorations. What I can give you are just guidelines, like um, like shapes that have worked for people in the past.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Yeah. And I will also say, especially at the beginning, it doesn't, as we go on this exploration, just like you said, we will encounter all those things that we realize have always been there, like a prickly, tense capacity. And it's important to remember that just because we see it more doesn't mean we're doing it wrong, right? We're uncovering, we're bringing to conscious awareness what's always been there. And that's the path towards healing. That's the path towards integration. It's the path towards growth. We treat all of those things that we just never had a chance to even acknowledge. All of the accumulated baggage, all of the pain that's never been felt through.
So sometimes when I meditate according to your practice book, it's like I'm in this twilight zone between verbalized thinking and non-verbalized thinking. So I will have something come up, an impulse, I will like go into it, feel it deeply, and kind of just have this feeling for expressing this invitation. And then sometimes it feels like there's really like a verbalized thought. It's like, oh yeah, like this is what I want. And sometimes it's just an undifferentiated feeling. And I don't know what to make of it because I feel like verbalizing things is like if it comes up, fine. But as for example, noting, it's a method to kind of take the power away from it as well and make it like feel less intense. And so I guess my question is it like skillful to try and verbalize things? Or of course it depends on the situation, but
Yeah.
you have some guidelines.
I would generally say go towards less thinking about and less verbalizing, but also don't reject it when it comes up. If something comes up and it feels, I think you said something like too intense or like too much power, to the degree that you have the capacity, also take that all the way in, like feel that through. Right? It's in the pushing away that we create more karma. It's in the pushing away that we send whatever arises into another loop in the unconscious. And sometimes it might not be possible. If something is too much, and certainly if something is repeatedly too much, like you have some thought that keeps coming up, something that feels really bad, you can even stop the meditation, right? You don't have to go at it with like, knife in your teeth and you gotta get to the target. Sometimes things will be too much, and it would be helpful to find a therapist or a community to explore that with. Not everything necessarily can be resolved in meditation, but for sure meditation makes us have more capacity for whatever other activity that we do in this process of healing and integrating.
Thanks.
So again, to say, like, go towards less and less thinking and more feeling, more being in the sensations in the body, more going towards the type of coherence that develops through the stages in the book, while allowing everything to come up, right, on the backdrop of the coherence.
Something to maybe to say to that, and previously you mentioned, which I like, I think the idea is to go toward not necessarily less thought, but I would say a higher level of operation, which is simplifying. Yes, less energy. Yes, more synergized. And to some people, I mean, getting into the feeling, it's very problematic because we are not there. I mean, I think the feeling, thoughts, or sensations, all of them are just portal to get to a particular point. and each individual has different kind of like strengths and weaknesses that can utilize in different ways. So I think it's a very personal, yes, to each. And I think, like you said, it's an individual journey ultimately, and you know that person should choose whatever they think to simplify ultimately to get to that particular point. Just kind of like sharing my thought about that.
Yeah, it's also important to remember that even as in the book, there's stages and when to move on, and it's all very neatly defined. The highest service we can do for ourselves is just to do the practice without thinking too much about the point that I have to get to. Yeah, enjoy the ride, so to speak. Okay, so let's try something right now. So the mental yoga and the book mostly talk about how to do this in meditation, but there's no reason, especially on the backdrop of the type of meditation we did at the beginning, where we let go and dissolve at least a little bit of the mental constructs we have in mind, to then use the space that's been freed up to instantiate one of the qualities. So I want you all to consider one quality, and it doesn't have to be strictly defined as the ones that I mentioned, right? It can be, other ways of thinking about it can be friendliness or warmth, understanding, charitable attitude, right? On top of gratitude and kindness and compassion, sympathetic joy. And choose one and really feel like you're putting it on, both internally and externally, both like you're putting on a piece of clothing, but also like you're infusing that into your bones. Like your blood vessels are now conducing some gratitude, some kindness. Like you took a shot of kindness and it's now in your blood. And anything that comes up, so the field that we've created, the faces that you see on the screen, whatever is on your mind, see if you can give it the treatment. In some sense, filter it. Filter is a bit of a harsh word, right? But like filter it or touch it with that quality. What would it be like to have an attitude of a little more friendliness towards each of us here? What would it be like to have some more gratitude about whatever our heads are a little tense about in this moment because we have some meeting later or we did not finish a task from before? How can we infuse that quality in our voices? How can we sit and have a bodily posture that reflects that quality? A few sessions ago, we were talking about the way that these qualities arise naturally. And the more the mind is enlightened, the more it's unburdened from the mental structures, which is why realized people walk around and it feels like they're exuding those qualities, like they exude peace or joy or kindness. And it can be an ongoing exploration, and I'm already seeing that a little bit on your faces. Like, how do you become an exemplar of the quality way before you're anything like a Buddha or whatever? Like right now, how can you live this path? How can you bring more kindness to the worry? How can you bring more compassion to the parts of you that are telling you, you didn't do the thing. You have to, blah, blah, blah. You're not doing it as good enough. Mm-hmm.
You know, this is beautiful when you kind of like talked about thinking, cultivating this attitude, and really infusing it in our posture, in our facial expressions. Yes, and everybody started to smile and to kind of like to loosen up. Yes,
Yeah.
and you embody, you know, these elements, and this is powerful. I mean, you really integrate that, and not just mentally, but really physically, and then emotionally. And I think this is that's very nice.
I want you to continue doing that. And as you do that, also notice how each of our faces have changed. Notice how you can pick up some sense of the quality. It doesn't have to be the precise one, right? Maybe just some warmth or softness or a welcoming attitude from each of us on the screen. And in this way, we're even creating a resonance between us that amplifies those qualities. It's a field that we're creating between us, and it's having this positive feedback, a virtuous cycle. Really stay with the felt quality. Don't think about it too much. When you look at someone's face this way or someone's body this way, it changes the assumptions about what's possible, both in terms of our connection and also what I'm allowed to feel, what I'm allowed to bring to the table. What I'm noticing is that there's a greater depth of a sense of safety in the space, like relaxedness. There's a bit of warmth, and there's also just a sense of greater coherence between us. And see if you can find this is. I hope you can hear me with the truck coming through. So this might be stretching yourselves a little bit, but see if you can feel what quality is originating from inside of you and what is more an aspect of the field that we're co-creating. You can tune into an extra sense of spaciousness, like an internal smoothness and coherence. And it's okay if not, just stick with the quality. Stick with this social meditation that we're doing, connected meditation. Think about how you would nurture the quality, like a small flame, the beginning of a fire. What's the fuel that you can pour on it? Whether it's saying kind words to it, or breathing into it, or making your body even more in the shape of it, being willing to externalize it, inviting it to more parts of the body. Yeah. So when you're ready, I would love for you to unmute and tell us about the quality or qualities that you've taken on and what the ride has been like. How it's been feeling and how you've related to things that are polarized from it coming out to the space. How does it feel to do it in this context? And then try to continue speaking from it. No, normally we have a tendency to treat this as like a science experiment, and then okay, we're done with the experiment, and I'm jumping out to my normal self, and now I'm looking at the thing and I'm reporting about it. No, speak from the quality, like bring it as an offering to the space. Okay, I'll start. I went with peace, and what I'm noticing is that there's a deep sense of okayness, like nothing can go wrong. And even if something goes wrong, in the sense of not being according to plan or some unpleasant surprise, even that's okay. It's like it's not a disturbance to this attitude of peace. It feels so pervasive in my body and in the space and also in you, like in my projections of you, like you're included in this piece to the point that even if you all decided that I suck and wanted to yell at me right now, that would also be okay. It would also be part of the piece. And then there's a way that I'm noticing on my voice that it's also that. It's like my nervous system is not upregulated. It's very calm. Noticing it in my voice. I'm imagining that speaking this way also makes me feel less threatening, more inviting to people who are listening. Just being peace, being willing to show up as peace, creates more peace. If there's resistance you're feeling to speaking, then you can also try speaking the resistance and infusing the speaking of the resistance with the quality, but putting the resistance front and center, bringing it to the space that we've created. Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
All good. So I chose love, and felt like almost overbearing in the middle because, like, I don't know, I was just very, very happy that all of you showed up today, and I felt like I wanted to tell everybody, like, oh, I love you all so much. Like, thank you for facilitating this field and sharing this moment. And then I felt this piece that you mentioned, like, because you said to feel into the field, and I really felt it wash over and like the relaxation in everybody's faces. And it felt like just opening up my awareness completely to perceiving all of you as you are was like the most loving thing, the most intense feeling of love in that moment. And it was interesting as well because like everybody started to look different uh, in a way, even just through that perception.
Beautiful. Wow. I felt you deep in that. Thank you so much for bringing that in. And I wonder if you all could feel not just the words, but the warmth and the I felt my heart being touched by this, like the direct feeling of the resonance, right? Below the level of content, below. And how does it make you feel in a space like this, right? Like for me, it's such a beautiful invitation. It's like this, oh, this is working out. This is beautiful. I can be me. Like this person is electing to see me through a loving lens. What does that evoke? What sort of invitation is this? Right? And so we can treat others and ourselves this way all the time. Or more and more. I don't want to set some impossible standard. Anyone else?
I didn't define exactly what feeling like line of self-love. I just wanted to search for something nice, and I think it is something like friendliness to all of you, or something like this. And as I got into this attitude, I felt myself smiling, and not only in the face, but some smiling feeling inside. And also I saw it on, I think, all of you, and it was making me happy to see you and see also the smiles on your faces and your postures, and it was really nice. But then there was the other direction. I just saw all your beautiful faces, and then I noticed that I myself feel somehow skewed, and my smile is a little bit crooked, and I just there was the two feelings, the one of happiness and friendliness and so on, and the other one is self-critique about my expression and so on. And that's where the two feelings are. I think the more dominant one was the happiness and that I felt and saw on your faces and postures, but also I was returning to this self-critique Yes, at times.
And were you able to also give that self-critique, the quality, like beam the niceness at it?
Somewhat, but not somehow little of
Yeah.
it.
Good. Keep going. That's the practice. So anyone else want to share? Otherwise we continue.
Sure.
Yes.
I did a similar, like a mix of the friendliness and a bit of that metta feeling. And it was like quite the touching everything, touching the faces on the screen was like a oh kind of feeling, like it was surprising how easy it was between there being a boundary or barrier versus a connection feeling. And then the part where you said like it opens up kind of a possibilities or I forget, like a more of an allowing. It felt like I could that there were thoughts that I usually have about how people are also having protections or holding things up that then means I can't either. But in the field, I could see that that was different. That wasn't there in the same way, and and that then felt like I was receiving. Like this gift of being allowed to be like whatever I am in the moment. And then there were other things that came up around, like I think like grief around not having had that. Then,
Yeah.
Fears about what that actually, like whether that actually would be okay because I hadn't had that, and things like that. And so it's kind of there are like two layers at the same time of like the underlying friendliness and care and love, and and the field was still there, and then had to not attach the two, like the thoughts and other feelings coming up to this, then they could kind of remain both there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was awesome.
Good. Very good. Any more questions about this? About the chapters, about what we talked about today?
Yeah, I have a question about a particular line that you. I just gonna read it, so because it's, you mentioned about the hindrances, but you mentioned about this spins the wheels of samsara and may collapse one's basis of operation from conscious awareness to unconscious awareness. I just wonder, what did you mean by from conscious awareness to unconscious awareness?
So we haven't talked about the differences between the different bases of operation yet, but this one is relatively simple. In every moment of existence, you can either be aware of awareness or not, right? So ordinary beings most of the time are stuck in thought loops, just going through the day, almost zombie-like, right? Like just like the occasional brief moment of like, oh, I'm in the car. Oh, I'm at work now. Oh, I'm watching Netflix now. Oh, I'm going to bed now, right? Like it's like a sense of really being with what is versus immersed in the process. Does it make sense? You all understand what I'm talking about, I imagine. Yeah. And the purpose of this first thrust, creating this consensus around one of those qualities more and more, is also to have a continuous conscious awareness. And conscious awareness is made possible when none of the parts, none of the subminds, none of the coordinators hijack all of the system and its resources in a way that collapses the capacity for all the coordinators to be in a shared conscious space and perceive together. A hijacking of the space entails, I don't know if most, but enough, a lot of the information going just towards one network and abstracting it from all the others in a way that puts us in the zombie state. It's like so much of the information is taken up just by one subnetwork like this, and it does that in an attempt to stay in control. Because if you control the information, you stay in control. If you control where the information goes, you can continue at least pretending to offer a solution to the problem of perceiving and acting, which is what awareness was created for, to create a space where information is exchanged about perception, about potential actions, about how to integrate all of our needs with all of the constraints of reality and create a graceful solution that we go forward with. And so this was a bit of a mouthful. Tell me if this makes sense to you, and we will talk about it more later. Then
No, I was not so simply clear the movement or the collapse from conscious to unconscious. That was not clear to me.
So the five hindrances, and that also is something that I go into more deeply in the next section of the book, the next part of the book, are strategies that coordinators use that create disharmony and division, that take away from coherence. It's like they create barriers and schisms in the mind in real time, such that it collapses the more sophisticated configuration of the mind that allows for conscious awareness. So in any moment that you are in conscious awareness, and just the fact of us speaking about this now and in some sense evoking more communication, and of course on the backdrop on the practice that we had, all of us, I'm assuming, are more in this configuration. But as soon as a hindrance comes up, as soon as a coordinator that's very stressed about something, about meeting some need, about the next meeting, about I didn't call this person is angry about me, anything that's a little more stressful and that has the potential to grab attention and keep it spinning inside itself and prevents the information from coming into the rest of the parts, we will collapse into unconscious awareness. There's still awareness, but it's unconscious. There's still awareness, but we are not aware that we are aware. The awareness of awareness is this greater space of intercommunicating parts. Does that make sense?
Conceptually, maybe it's related to even the point of wholeness and emptiness in a similar manner, to some degree, which kind of like the duality. It's kind of like challenging because obviously you want to be aware, but not to the degree that it's really kind of like you are in control. You want to loosen up to some degree, but the idea of being aware that it's of the unconsciousness, it's kind of like, because ultimately, you try to bring the unconscious to the conscious to ultimately become in some ways habitual, that it's become automatic and almost unconscious. So it's kind of like circularity to some degree, that it's never ending, and where is the maybe the integration of both? I don't know, but something that was not clear about anyway.
So
Yeah.
that, I don't know if my answer satisfies. For sure we will discuss this much more going forward.
Yeah. In any case, I have to leave right now, but I'll thank you so much for a beautiful session. I'll see you next week.
See you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we go into a quick exploration and then we'll be done for today.
I have a brief question.
Mhm.
You talked about your method of meditation and the trusts. Is there some correspondence or connections to the stages of Chuladasa's elephant path?
Yeah. Yeah, we cover the same territory. By the end of the first thrust, if you have a stable stage 4 practice, that's the equivalent to the end of the elephant path. And then we can move forward to the second thrust and do emptiness practices.
Thank you.
All right. So what I want you, yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, I have one more question. And please tell me if this fits. It's about identity and values. Because to some degree, those are also constraints, right? The identity is also, I feel, made up of genes and constraints.
Yep.
At the same time, I feel it is very useful because it allows other people to predict what we're going to do in certain
Yes.
situations, and that enables cooperation, like having a family.
Mhm.
And so I have this fear that if even through equanimity and the Brahma Viharas, more of this, like the identity gets more dynamic or softer, maybe that then has a bad effect on social cooperation, which then again like leads to stress and more tension. So it seems kind of like paradoxical, and I would like to ask if you know of a way to navigate like this tension.
Yeah, it's a great question. And certainly with certain types of meditations and for people who are going at it without guidance, they could go into, let's say, too much dissolution too fast, or because of bad practice habits, because of unskillful guidance, they can go towards completely deconstructing or let's say harming the self structure. And that's not what we want to do. The path that I like is about creating the conditions for even what we call the small self to evolve. Self is a great organizing element of your life, both in the sense of allowing others to predict you, like to to come into connection with you without you being, some abstract entity that keeps surprising them. But more than that, even if you are the more abstract entity that has so much freedom that it continually surprises, for you, it's still an organizing element that you want to keep online. And the point here is not to destroy it, not to dissolve it, not to always go naked, so to speak, but to be able to take off the parts of what you're wearing that are not necessary for the moment. In some sense, it's like, this is where the clothing analogy breaks down a little bit. It's like, imagine that your multifaceted identity with this practice allows you to let go of any aspect of it that's not the most relevant for the moment. And for these parts that are most relevant, that you do want to play with, that you do want to wear, it allows you to develop them. so that you're more skillful in being what you are. So we're both creating the space for putting down any aspect of it that's not needed, while allowing every part of the system to develop. In some sense, you could say the reason it doesn't develop is that it's so bunched up and tight, right? No part is willing to let go and to allow the other parts to have some space to develop. It's like, if you know the analogy of a crab bucket, that's sort of what the self structure is in an ordinary mind. And so there is cause for care, for being on top of things. Like if you notice that you're going towards this association, this depersonalization, derealization, won't go into it now. If your experience starts being like a little wishy-washy, dreamy, feel disconnected, have a hard time feeling emotions, disconnected from your body, then get support. Like, also welcome to come talk to me, right? But I'm speaking about get support in a general sense. And then there needs to be a better orientation towards practice, or sometimes some healing of trauma, more embodiment. There are things to do. But we would never want to just have the ego or the self or whatever you want to call it. We never want to explode something. And it's also not in the way, right? Even as we're calling it a crab bucket and we're sort of making it bad, right? We don't want to invalidate anything. We don't want to push it down.
Thanks. That's very relieving to hear, and makes me trust the path and the process a lot more.
Great.
A question about the I feel like if it's a kind of friendliness towards everything, it requires a lot of trust that like all these parts that we thought could be harmful like aren't gonna do anything actually harmful or something. And then not can I extend to okay actually
Please, yes. I don't want to stop you. Yeah.
And then but then I also wonder if it requires trust that parts of people outside of ourselves also won't be bad actors, or does that not really matter as long as we befriend whatever they would elicit in us? Yeah.
So friendliness is not an assumption that other people or even other parts of us are not going to be harmful. It's the capacity to be friendly and compassionate and kind, even to those who hurt us. But to be kind to someone who wants to hurt us doesn't mean we let them hurt us. It's as we protect ourselves, as we incapacitate them, even as we might lock them up, maybe that's the best solution we have, is to be kind to them, to see in the same way that we know that our parts might not be kind and want to harm because of pain that they're carrying, because of karma that's still spinning. Also recognizing it in whoever wants to harm us, and to the best of our capacity, know that the only way to lead to meaningful and positive change, to healing and integration, is with kindness, even as we protect ourselves, even as we restrict their capacity to be harmful.
And what is that restricting their capacity like look like, especially with like parts?
Like internal parts?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can be, if you have a voice in the head that's continually criticizing, that's continually telling you, yo, you're bad and you're wrong. You can be curious, you can be kind, you can be tender with him. It's like, oh, what makes you speak to me this way? No, this is very unpleasant. It's not helping. Right? And you can have like a whole discussion with that part. There's a practice of aspecting, if you heard of it, where you you place two chairs and you sit in one, and then you go to the other and speak from the perspective of the part. And you have a conversation, and then the part is like, oh, I'm trying to take care of you. You keep fucking up, and I want you to do better. right? And so just the act of having curiosity, putting an interest, giving it the space to express, is an act of kindness, right? Seeing what's there, seeing how you can resolve the conflict through finding the commonalities, through coming into fruitful dialogue, right? And maybe inviting it to be kinder to you, right? To the other parts. And if it doesn't, if it's really doing this and you're running away from a tiger, or whatever is like really requiring you to be on top of things in the moment, you can also say back, I will not be treated this way. And you can say that to yourself and you can say that to another person. Right? I will not be treated this way. Just like be very firm. It's also kindness, both to yourself and to the other person or the other part. Because generally, generally speaking, no one wants to be the villain. No one wants to harm. Even those who want to inflict pain generally think that that's the best option that they have, that they're doing something good. And if you reflect to them the impact that it has on you, that it hurts, that it's not helping achieve the goal that they have, right? And that's assuming you even know what the goal is, right? Which is where curiosity comes into place. That enough can be a kind gesture towards them. Tell them, hey, if you want to affect me in a certain way, just so you know, hurting me doesn't help so much. And maybe you can say it more kindly. Maybe you can say it more softly. Maybe you can be curious about me. That's an act of kindness. It's an act of friendliness. It's an act of communication, vulnerability. Right? So it's not about trusting. It's not even about expecting that they stop. Right? You say this because that's your highest gesture. And you hope that it leads to a good outcome, right? That's partly why you do it. But that this is where we act without attachment to result, which is also a kind act towards yourself, because attachment to result is suffering.
That makes sense. How do we distinguish what's like, okay, this hurts me because of my karma versus this part in another person is hurting me? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's a question that keeps being asked all the way down. And that the answer to is never, let's say, never 100% clear. But thankfully, it doesn't matter, because ultimately you feel the pain in the moment. That's first and foremost. Just feel what comes up. And then through a similar process, and there's so many different tools, you can inquire, like, what hurts about this? Where is this coming from? How much is it the person who's speaking to me a certain way right now? How much is it the memory from when I was 3 years old and my kindergarten teacher was a little mean to me? Right? And we learn to go, and this is a whole exploration. We learn how to clean up those parts that we've pushed away where the pain comes from, and we learn to grow them up. Right? We learn to be the loving environment that allows them to develop in such a way that ultimately leads to not being hurt by things that we almost take for granted are necessarily hurtful when people do them to us, when we encounter them in reality. So yeah, this is a whole wide field of exploration. It's like giving you like the tip of the iceberg.
That makes sense. But given that, like how does one, because I'm kind of like, well, if a chunk of it, if most of it is my own karma, then where's my right almost to like say to someone, no, you stop that, don't do that anymore.
Well, Jen, you have infinite permission to do whatever you want. Everything is allowed. The only question is, how do you want to be? How do you want to be?
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, I think my parts would feel better about everything if I were better at protecting them. So I think I'd like more of that.
Yeah. And then we develop our capacities to protect ourselves. At the beginning, it might be pushing someone back, and later it's seeing that they hurt. And so maybe we can come into dialogue and even be compassionate towards them, right? And be part of the solution, even as they see us as the enemy. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
So we have a few minutes left. I really want us to do even a short exercise. We want to do the breakout rooms. And I want each of you to bring to mind a situation in your life. It doesn't have to be the most intense one, where you think one of these positive qualities, one of these sustainable attitudes would be useful. And take a minute to think about this, and I'd love to hear from at least one or two of you what you came up with. How would a situation in your life or relationship, some issue at work, would be benefited by wearing the genes of gratitude or compassion or what have you? Take a minute to think. Consider how you would feel if you came in with kindness instead of anger at someone, or with compassion instead of blame. You can imagine how the relevant people would react if you came in with this attitude. How the situation would be benefited. And jump in when you're ready.
So I have this group project at university, and I tend to be a bit of I tend to kind of slide into this manager role because I don't want to give up control. I want things to be nice, very good. And I realized that being compassionate, taking the ideas of people and the impulses of people, and just be grateful for them, will often lead to these people bringing more energy into the project and like allocating more of the resources to do better in the project. And so, like counterintuitively, to me at least, like when you just start letting go a bit, others will of course bring more in, but then the things they will bring in will also seem better because they're more motivated. Yeah. So I have a meeting tomorrow, which I'm gonna try to take that attitude in, those genes.
Anyone else?
I think maybe more gratitude for protection parts, like in general, in both like myself and other people. I think like like just letting them play it out, and then they can kind of learn where that line is, kind of like Dora, what you were saying. And then I think the same for other people. Like I have when people don't, when their protection parts are just like, let's just pretend and like not look at things. I think historically, I want to be like, let's look at it. But I kind of trusting that, like, you know, their protection parts obviously know better. Like what's safe and not for them. Let's leave it. Like I don't need to. I can decide how close I want to come if that is problematic for me, that they can't see certain things that they're doing, but it's not like my place to come in and like try to poke their protection parts. The difficulty becomes when they want me to come closer, but there's a conflict there, but that's a separate thing, I think.
Boys, do you want to share anything? Otherwise, go towards ending.
I thought about some situation between me and my daughter. I prefer not to share it.
Okay. All right. This was a really beautiful session. Still holding in me, and will take into my day all of the attitudes that we all beamed at one another. I hope you do too. And next week we'll speak about levels of mind. We'll go into the exploration of the basis of operation and define them and start getting a taste what the differences between them are, where we're going with all this practice. Hope to see you all next week.
Thank you so much for the session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Have a great day, everybody.
You too.
Or
Yeah.
night.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye.